Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts, and in today's video we're going to be making this lovely hexagonal treat box which opens with a closure mechanism like so, and you don't have to make the closure mechanism. There is an alternative way of closing the box which I'll show you in the video, and it's a really enjoyable make. I will warn you up front that I think for a box this size I used about 4 sheets of A4 cardstock, so just bear that in mind, but it's a really lovely project to put together. So let me show you how I made it. The hexagon I'm using to create the base and the base of the boxes and the tops of the boxes is 5.5 inches across the widest part. The first thing to do is to cut this hexagon 3 times, and in 2 of the hexagons you want to take a smaller hexagon and lay it in the middle. So decide whether you want to cut the 2 hexagons at the same time or cut the big layer and then run it through the machine again with the smaller hexagon in. So I've cut 1 full hexagon, and now I'm going to cut 2, and I'm going to lay my smallest hexagon, which measures 2.25 inches along the widest point, and I'm going to place this in the middle and run it through the machine and cut the 2 at the same time. Now you don't need hexagon dies for this. You could cut a circle and cut segments off to create your hexagon shape for your base. You could do the same with a smaller circle on maybe a thicker piece of card and create yourself a hexagon template that way. So you're certainly not limited by having hexagon dies for this project. What you might find easier in the lining up, to take your first full hexagon, lightly pencil mark between the points, then take your smallest die and place your die so that the points of the smaller die intersect with the pencil lines, and once they intersect I know that that's equidistant, so I can now take my die down and run that through my die cutting machine. So use whichever process you find easiest. Ultimately you want to end up with 1 full hexagon and 2 hexagons which will have the centre cut out. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 hexagons that have got the middle cut out, and if you've drawn the pencil lines in as I've done, we want to use our scissors, trimmer, guillotine, whichever's your preferred cutting method, and we're going to cut each of these sections. So we're going to end up with 6 pieces of cardstock for the top, and then we're going to do the same, which is the 6 pieces of cardstock for the bottom. Once you've cut your tops and your bottoms, which are obviously the same size, just go ahead and rub out any of your pencil marks. Now we're going to create each of the 6 box elements, and I'm going to take a top and a bottom and I'm going to work in pairs. And the first thing I'm going to do is just line up the top and the bottom and just make sure that as near as possible they are the same. There's a very slight element on the piece underneath which is larger than this one, so I'm just going to trim each set of pairs, but I'm going to do that as I work through each pair. So my base and my top cover are the same. Now if I show you on the prototype that I've made, I've chosen to have the base of the box 1 inch deep and the top of the box 1/2 inch deep. You will need to individually measure each of the widths that you're going to need for the outer supports of the box. My pieces measure 2 3/4, 1 5/8, 1 3/16, and 1 5/8. And I want a 1/2 inch tab to be. For the base element, my strips are 1 1/2 inches wide, and that's going to be scored at 1/2 inch. And I'm then scoring at 1 5/8, 4 3/8, 6, and I'm then going to rotate and score at 1/2 inch at the other end. And this section here gives me my 1 3/16 inch. And my tab is going to sit here into this piece. So for the bases, my 1/2 inch tabs are going to sit underneath. So this is going to be the inside of the box. And for the top sections, your bands are exactly the same length. So in my case, 7 11/16. I've chosen to have an 1/2 inch deep top. So my strip is 1 inch wide and I'm scoring at 1/2 inch. And again, I'm going to score along the long side at 1 5/8 inch, 4 3/8 inch, 6 inches, rotate and score at 1/2 inch. And for the top section of the box, the 1/2 inch tab is going to sit underneath. So this would be the side that you would see, and the 1/2 inch tabs are going to sit underneath on the inside. For all of your strips, fold and burnish along your score lines. In the 1/2 inch tab at the end, we're going to cut away the corner like so, cut a small wedge into here to create our glue tab, and then I'm going to cut a small wedge into the end of this tab, and then I'm folding back and cutting a wedge into one of the 1/2 inch tabs to create our glue tabs. So this is one of the side panels for our top, and the 1/2 inch tab is going to sit on this side here. I'm going to add glue to our glue tabs, then slowly working my way round, I'm going to adhere the side sections to the top. I'm going to work on a base and a lid for one segment at a time, and as necessary, as I move round, I'm going to trim away any overhang within the tabs. You may want to check your tabs before you start to glue, or check each one as you move round. Finally, I'm going to add some glue onto this tab here, and there we have our first lid. So I'm going to follow exactly the same process for the remainder of the lids. Do the same with the bases, which are going to be 1 inch deep, but with the bases, the tabs are going to be on the underside. So the tabs will be under here, and I'm going to work on the remainder of my segments. Once you've made the box lid and the box bases, you want to cut 6 pieces of cardstock, which are 2 5/8 by 1 1/2 inches. Along the 1 1/2 inches, score at 1 inch. Fold and burnish the piece in both directions, and we're going to use this to create our hinge, which is going to join the bottom and the top piece together. I'm going to use my construction glue, lay that in the back section of the segment, pushing it right down to the base and flat against the back. I'm going to go in with my score tool and just burnish that down. Then I'm going to apply my glue to the back of the hinge, take my lid, lay my lid in against the back of the hinge lining up the top and bottom section of the box. I'm going to open the box and spring the hinge back, making sure that the top is level on both ends. Push that into place. So you want to do that on all 6 segments, and then when the segments are fully dry, just flex them backwards and forwards as much as you can. You want the hinge to be quite bouncy because you want the lid, once the box is open, to be able to sort of spring. It won't spring open fully, but it will certainly spring open as far as that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to join the segments together, and then we're going to apply them to the base. Now, we're going to have cardstock butting up against cardstock, etc. So they're not going to fit onto the base perfectly. There will be some overhang, but that's perfectly fine. I'm going to use my construction glue, and then working my way around, I'm going to line my segments up as near as possible and join my box together. So I'm going to do that all the way around, add glue to my next section and add my next segment. And we want to concentrate more on the outer panels being lined up than the inner panels. So I'm not concerned that I've got a little bit of overhang here. Add in my final segment, which I'm going to add glue to the box and just slot that into place. As I slot it in, I'm just going to pull it all together. So now that's joined up, what I'm doing is I'm just going to use some bulldog clips and just help that as it dries, just to make sure it dries where I want it. Whilst that's drying on the top, I'm going to add glue to my base section, and I'm going to add my base hexagon and just let that sit to dry. We're now going to cut the pieces which is going to be the support for the lid, and these are going to sit inside each of these sections here and come up into the box. So we need them to be the width to fit snugly along inside each of these sections, but we don't want them to be any taller than the lid of the box. So I'm going to make mine 1 1/4 inches, and I'll trim if necessary, and I'm going to make them 1 3/8 of an inch high. But before I stick each piece in, I'm just going to round off the corners. Just going to lay my ruler down and just place my piece so that I can make sure that I try not to get construction glue everywhere. So I'm just trying to put the glue within the 1 inch section, and then I'm going to adhere that into the centre section like so. So I shall do that all the way around. So they are now stuck in place, so I'm going to let those dry. To finish the main elements of the box, I'm going to cut 6 pieces of cardstock, which are 1/16 of an inch under 1 5/8 of an inch, and they're 2 inches long, which I've scored at 1 inch. So this is personal preference as to whether you want to add this bit or not. These are just going to sit over here just to tidy up this top edge, but again, you may feel that that's not necessary and you're happy with the look of your box. There's my additional pieces added, and now I'm going to get on and make the closure mechanism. If you don't want to make the additional closure mechanism, the box can be closed like so, and just slot the lid over the upright tabs, and then that box is closed and ready for decoration. However, if you want to make the alternative closure method, I will show you that now. I'm starting out with a circle which is 3 1/4 inches in diameter. So that is going to sit on the top like so. I will be adding a decorative element into here, but you want to be able to use cardstock which is flexible enough that you will be able to lift the sides up and just push the box lids under like so. To complete the closure mechanism, we're now going to create the section which is going to run from the lid and down into the box, and you will need to adjust the measurements accordingly depending on what you need. The measurement you'll need is the inside section here, which in my case is 1 3/16 of an inch, and you want the length of the piece to allow for a tab to adhere to the circle, the depth to go into the box, so this depth here. So I'm going to have a 1/2 inch tab, this lid is 1/2 inch, and then you want an element which is going to come out into the box, and I'm going to allow 1 inches. So my cardstock needs to be 2 inches wide, and it's going to be 7 3/4 inches long. All will become clear as I make the section up. Along the 2 inch side, I'm going to score at 1/2 inch and 1 inches. Because I need mine 1 3/16 of an inch, which is on this notch here, 1, 2, 3/16, I'm going to put a piece of cardstock in against the edge of my scoreboard, which is going to shift this piece of card along slightly, remove it, and score at 1 1/4. When I move back, you'll see I've got 1, 2, my score line is now on the 1 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to repeat that process all the way along. My next score line is going to be at 2 3/8. My next score line, I'm going to put my card in, shift my card along, and score at 3 5/8. My next score line, I'm going to put my card in, shift my card along, and score at 4 7/8. My next score line is 6 inches. Rotate the cardstock and score at 1/2 inch. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to lay my piece round on the inside without doing any burnishing or folding, and just making sure that that is going to be where I need it to be. I'm happy with that. Fold and burnish all of the score lines. The 1/2 inch tab is at the other end. I'm going to fold the strip over and I'm going to wedge into the 1/2 inch tab. So I'm just going to create my glue tabs. And I'm going to cut away this end 1/2 inch tab and cut a wedge in at the other end. Next, with the 1/2 inch tab now facing me, cut up the remaining score line and cut that into a glue tab and cut away this end section. Our piece now looks like this. Now I'm going to cut up each of these 1 inch score lines. I'm just going to show you how this goes together. This is our 1/2 inch tab, which is going to be attached to the circle we made earlier. Our second 1/2 inch fits over the supports, and then our 1 inch section goes into the box segments like so. So decide now whether you're happy that you've got squares here. You might want to add a shape into those. You can see I've deconstructed mine because I glued it down before I'd rounded. So I've chosen to round the corners in these sections here. I'm going to add quick grab glue to my glue tab, add my section together, pull out my tabs, get my hexagon into shape, and then I'm going to re-add construction glue to my tabs, sit my circle back on top, like so. Close my couple of these just to make sure it's in the right place. That's good. Just going to undo those. I'm going to set that aside to dry, and then using one of the hexagon inners from earlier that was cut out of the main sections, I'm just going to add construction glue and add this into the middle just to cover up the tabs inside. So I'm now going to be patient and let that dry thoroughly. My box and closure mechanism are now completely dry. So just to demonstrate, the closure mechanism fits on like so. Flip the sides up of the lid element, tuck the boxes under, and the box is now closed. And what will happen is the box lid gets opened and the box lids will flip back like so. Here is the finished decorated box. As you can see, I've added pattern paper on the outer sections of the box and on the top of each segment. On the lid, I've added a die cut, and then I've laid up 3 wooden discs, and I've created a shrink plastic butterfly, and that gives me a nice pull to take the lid out. I've added paper onto each of the wings, and there's our box. So we've got a total of 7 sections for treats, including this one in the middle, which would be enclosed. And as I said earlier, you don't need to make this system. You could just have the box close like so, and you could have your message stamped in the middle. I've chosen not to put decorative paper inside the lid to conceal the tabs, and I'm still pondering over that. But all in all, I'm really happy with how this has turned out. And just to reiterate, the lid slots on like so, and I've got plenty of give around my outer edge to slot my lids back into place. And there we go. I hope you'll give the project a go. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell for future videos. Until next time, thanks for watching.